What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Pillars Unpacked. Thank you so much for tuning into today's video. Today's video is going to feature St. Peter Catholic Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. This is a Catholic parish in the Diocese of Charlotte, so I'm going to plug all of the church footage now, and then we'll come back after to talk about its history and just talk about it in more detail. Okay, so St. Peter Catholic Church is the official name of the parish. I have heard St. Peter's used for short. I'm not sure which is technically correct because I've heard both kind of used interchangeably. I'll probably just say St. Peter's for short, but the actual name of the church is St. Peter Catholic Church. I'm pretty sure from everything that I've seen. And I did want to say or give a special shout out to Kay, who works for the church, who gave me a tour and gave me a lot of behind the scenes information on the history of the church. Really enjoyed that and helped me learn a lot more about it. And before I forget, I do want to mention that the church does have an awesome YouTube channel, which I will put in the video description. They live stream mass and other kind of special events, but they also have done some really cool. They did like a 3-part history series on the church, which if you're interested, I would highly recommend it. I think there were some longtime members of the church who kind of set out to do this extensive kind of project to document the entire history of the church, which it goes back a pretty long ways. And I thought it was excellent, and I learned a ton from it. So obviously there's a lot of detail because these are pretty like long extended videos, and it's done in 3 parts. So a lot more than I can cover on kind of a short recap video like this. But if you're interested, definitely check it out. There's some really cool tidbits of history in there. So this church originally was established in 1851, and this is still the oldest Catholic church in the city of Charlotte. The original building, and for a while that original church building, it was the only Catholic church in the city. And I should mention, you can tell from the videos, but the church is located like right in the heart of Uptown. So I always think it's pretty cool to see just the juxtaposition of a much smaller kind of like worship space compared to all these massive skyscrapers and other like very modern buildings located in, kind of uptown settings in the present day. So I think that's pretty cool. And especially this is a Victorian era church. So it's got that like deep red brick look to it, kind of just juxtaposing against like the all glass or heavy glass featured taller office buildings and things like that. So I think that's kind of interesting. But what's kind of crazy is the original structure of the building was damaged during the American Civil War. There was actually a somewhat located nearby. There was a local ammunition kind of like depot, a munitions depot, and it actually exploded, like a massive explosion, which severely damaged the foundations of the building. So they end up having to rebuild it. And the current building where it stands today was constructed in 1893. So it took a little bit of time for it to kind of be revamped and rebuilt. And the original church, like I mentioned, it was started in 1851. And I think it's pretty cool that if you can see it in one of the clips, there's a little thing in the stone of just the sidewalk kind of around the church, which says St. Peter's in AD 1851, which commemorates the year that the original church was started, and I believe that was original to the actual original space. So I think that's a pretty cool nod to the history of the original church and the date that's associated with. So that's why that's there, and I think that is very cool. So yeah, the current building as it stands now, it was built in 1893, and it's one of still the oldest buildings existing on Tryon Street, which is the main thoroughfare through Uptown Charlotte. And something else I want to recommend too is to go on their website, and again on their YouTube channel. There's a lot of images and videos that show what the church looked like before kind of like the modern iteration of it. And some of it goes so far back, they're just like artistic depictions of it. But you can see like there used to be basically nothing but just like houses, next to it. And the church has looked in this particular style, even though it's been renovated since. It's been in this style for a while now, since very late 19th century. And so just seeing that kind of like growth around it, I think is always very, very wild. And you can kind of tell a lot of just like the local history of the city through how things develop and grow around a space like this that is there for such a very long time. So it's pretty cool to see those pictures and how it's changed. But it's pretty wild to think this is one of the oldest buildings in all of Uptown Charlotte, and it used to look very, very different around it. So I think that's worth noting. The history of the church, it kind of went through some up and down in terms of like growth in a positive way of Catholicism in Charlotte, and then this church housed a lot of, you know, the needs basically of like the entire city for a while. But then it kind of went to where attendance at this church, I think in like the 70s, kind of started to decline because a lot of Catholics started moving to suburbs that were developing a lot outside of the city. And so it kind of hit a period of decline, but then it hit like a revival, if you will, in the mid 1980s when it started to be staffed and run by the Jesuit religious order, which I think is interesting. And then the courtyard space, which I really enjoyed spending some time there. It's nice, like quiet space of reflection. There's that statue, monument, whatever you want to call it, to Saint Ignatius, who is the founder of the Jesuit order. And so it's been staffed by them ever since. And I think the church has had, in the history videos that they did on the church, they kind of called it a revival of sorts, because I think the church has been doing extremely well ever since then. Well, in the sense that it's well attended by parishioners. There's certainly a lot of people that live right around the area, and obviously a lot of people that work there for kind of like the afternoon masses and things like that. So I think there's a lot that the church is doing, and then a lot of outreach and kind of community work that they're doing as well because of it. So I think that's very, very cool to see. Something else that I wanted to highlight, and I'm going to try to include an image of it, is so in the current sanctuary, there's kind of like that mural painting, if you will, that depicts, obviously Jesus is there and then the disciples fishing. This originally used to be not originally, but the church, when it was rededicated and revamped after this kind of like revival period in the late 1980s, Ben Long was commissioned to do this like very ornate like fresco painting, and that style was famously used by Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel. It's where like you put plaster on a wall and then paint over it while it's wet, and then when it dries it kind of like sticks into it, and it has like a very I'm not like an art person, but it has like a very interesting look and very distinct look to it, I think is what I'm trying to say. And that is like a very, very old artistic technique. So it definitely had like a very cool look to it. And I'm going to try to include an image of it. Again, thanks to Kay for giving me that and for kind of showing me more about. But this fresco was looks to be incredibly impressive. You can tell from the image that the door kind of at the center bottom of the image is actually the door that leads to the sacristy. So again, you're looking straight at the main sanctuary altar area. Now the mural is a lot smaller, so you kind of go like around the side to get back to that, like the sacristy, if you will. It's directly behind where the tabernacle sits now. So this fresco took up the entire back wall of that area. So it was very, very large and looked very impressive. And when there was some work, I believe it was just that there was some work being done uptown on buildings around the area, like some demolition work or just construction work in general, caused the fresco to fall, and it was badly damaged. And it was basically damaged beyond repair. It fell into like thousands of pieces because this was a very, very large piece. So the fresco was kind of like a 3-paneled design, which I hope you can see. In that image, I did the best I could trying to include it there, but it's the Annunciation and the crucifixion and the resurrection kind of all depicted in different ways. And there's a lot of different people from all those different stories that are depicted there, which is awesome. What I do think is cool is that the church kind of salvaged what pieces they could of the fresco. So you can see a little piece of it in the main entryway before you enter into the nave. little pieces of it that they've kind of preserved. And actually all throughout the campus, the different buildings, they have, in some cases they're large pieces that were preserved. They've framed them and kept them kind of around. So I think that's a very cool nod to the history, that they've preserved it as best they can. And I think it preserves the beautiful artistry of it, and it keeps that kind of story of something that was so central to the church for such a long time. So obviously the mural that's there now is very different, and there's another like overflow space that if there's the actual nave is too full, like too many worshipers at one time, they'll live stream it. And down in that area, they have quite a few of these pieces preserved, and some of them are very big. So that was very interesting to go see and learn about. So I think that was awesome. I think just lastly, other things I want to point out, the building kind of behind, or it's between like the garden kind of like reflection area is between the back of the church and then this building, which it's currently used as for offices and other functions like meeting spaces for the church. That was originally a hospital, and this was talked about in their YouTube series, that history channel, or the history videos they did on their YouTube channel. But it was originally a hospital space, and then it was used as a convent for a time, actually, for the church. And so it's still there. It's very cool. And now it's used for offices, which I think, again, it preserves that history. And then the Ignatius Center, which is directly to the right of the church, it was the original rectory. And now it's still used for meeting spaces, and it's used for for people that are getting married at the church. It's used as like a space for, prep and people getting ready and things like that at the church. So I think that's pretty cool. But again, I think it shows a lot of just the local history of the city. And I think it's awesome that the church has endured with all this change kind of going up around it. And it was very interesting to learn about that fresco art piece, it's a shame that it was damaged. But again, I think the interior of the church is still beautiful. The stained glass, of course, I think is very beautiful and draws that light inward. And I think it always gives you something interesting to look at, in addition to the Stations of the Cross going all the way around the nave. So very much enjoyed getting to explore this church and learning more about it. Again, thank you so much to Kay for teaching me about the history and kind of showing me around the space. I very much enjoyed that. And again, I would encourage people to check out the website. There's photos of just like what the interior of the church looked like at various points in its history, as it was kind of, again, renovated, with things like this fresco being included and things like that, and artistic depictions of the church, what it originally looked like, and the area surrounding it. And then if you're interested, those videos on the history of the parish it's pretty awesome. So thank you so much for tuning in to today's video. We'll be back with another video soon, and until then, keep looking up.